Hey everyone, today I wanted to do something a little bit different, and that is the fact that I wanted to go over what makes a fantastic Monster Hunter game. And I certainly want to wish and encourage everyone to go ahead and let me know in the comments what kind of amazing features it is that intrigue you to the series to begin with, and what it is that you are looking forward to the most for the next mainland entry. The reason why I'm making this video is that because of course there has been plenty of rumors for the next mainland Monster Hunter game being revealed somewhere around Tokyo Game Show of 2023 later this year. I made a video about that just a few days ago, so of course I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below if you haven't necessarily caught up with all the news. But simply put, whatever the next mainline game will be will need to draw in plenty of players and of course provide us with brand new features, but more importantly features that we already have seen in previous games that will make players return to the franchise if they haven't necessarily done so already. So in this video, certainly want to encourage all of you to let me know in the comments what it is that you want to see from the next mainline game, but more importantly, some of the features that I think make Monster Hunter fantastic. And I want to divide this video in two specific sections because I feel like at the end of the day, there's two very specific camps in the Monster Hunter community. The big Monster Hunter World fandom that was created by the release of that game on PlayStation and Xbox a few years back, and of course the more traditional players that seem to love Rise and Sunbreak because it still maintains a lot of what made Monster Hunter originally, but at the same time it adds plenty of quality of life improvements, and it still feels like one of those traditional Monster Hunter games in the more traditional fashion, albeit of course sped up just a little bit more. So when it comes to the Monster Hunter fandom, I think one of the things that I think personally they would love to request is just more of the same. More of that natural world being brought into the light, something that didn't necessarily happen before, of course, in the PSP and the 3DS days, where the worlds, the environments that you get to visit feel more realistic. It feels like an untamed area. It feels like there's just plenty of places you can go ahead and hide, plenty of places where a monster can kind of scurry about, and the environment kind of complement the monsters themselves. They don't necessarily stand out, they're not the most visual focus, but in fact they are complementary to the environment that are around you. In that same vein, not only did the environments feel more alive, but also the monsters feel more alive as well. A lot of people will praise Monster Hunter World and Iceborne for that matter, since they gave the monsters, whenever you're not necessarily hunting them, more things to do. They were able to kind of just go about their way. They would engage with each other, kind of hang around on their own. Each one had distinct personalities, if you will. They were like coded, of course, differently. And at the end of the day, it made each one of them feel more unique than traditionally how they do. One of the criticisms that I've levied and something that I've had some pushback from players when it comes to Rise and Sunbreak is that each monster just kind of has a very specific line through that they kind of go about. They move from one area to another in a very let's say unlike realistic way. They just kind of have carved out paths in which wherever the way they go, where in World it might be that way. It's still they kind of patrol very specific areas, but they feel more natural in the way they go about it, where like in Rise and Sunbreak it feels a little bit more robotic, and that's been one of my fair criticisms for the newest release. Obviously, every brand new entry brings with it a bunch of new monsters, but also plenty of changes to already existing monsters. Some of the changes that we got to see specifically were for monsters like Diablos and Rathalos in Monster Hunter World. Some more monsters like Barriath were tweaked for the release of Iceborne, and plenty of other monsters that were already there like Puke and Palomalu and the new iterations of it, the new subspecies, were also tweaked by the time that Iceborne was released. So plenty of just those changes that make monsters kind of stand out on their own. Even Zinogre was touched up a little bit. That when it came to Sunbreak and Rise, of course, they end up getting tweaked even more. But when it came specifically for those players who love World more than Rise and Sunbreak, one of the things that they will tell you is that the monsters' unique movements feel a little bit more fluid, which is 100% accurate. That's actually something that we went over previously in developer quotes, since they had the limitations, of course, of the Nintendo Switch, and they kind of just needed to limit the skeletal movement of the monsters themselves when it came to the release of the Rise, and that was just something that was just drawn back, cut back, if you will. Just the natural movements of the monsters were more fluid in World and Iceborne than, of course, they have been for the newest entry. Environments can also be interacted with. It feels like a little bit more in Iceborne and base Monster Hunter World than they can be in Rise and Sunbreak for obvious reasons. There's plenty of deformation from specific areas and different maps when it comes to World and Iceborne that just simply did not necessarily make the cut in Rise and Sunbreak, and that is something, one of the biggest things that players for those games, supporters of those games, will often praise as well. Now, when it came to the actual hunting aspects of it, of course, plenty of quality of life improvements were added in. We mentioned that at the top of the video, but of course, just the lobby, the fact that you had plenty of players to be able to engage with at the lobby. You had multiple people to just kind of pick and choose with whomever you wanted to go and hunt. This was the feature that a lot of people kind of like want to see come back, of course, being expanded upon. And of course, whatever the next mainline game will most likely end up doing that, bringing lobbies back, giving you more things to do as games have become more and more interactive since ever before. And the last little benefit I think that most players in Monster Hunter World or fans of Monster Hunter World will tell you is that, of course, catching fauna and bringing it over to your house and being able to decorate your house with the fauna that you caught is one of the biggest additions to the game, because it just adds more realism to the game at the end of the day. The fact that you can enhance your house from small to big to all of that, just make it look different. They added more of that. Now, in Rise, to be fair, and Sunbreak, of course, those options are still there, but you cannot necessarily catch, natural fauna or like put them in a display, if you will. You can still just have little decorations around your house, which is more limited in that regard. But of course, when it comes to just changes and drawbacks, that is one of the places that they decided to draw back on some of that. Now, one of the things that I haven't necessarily touched upon is, of course, the story aspects of it, because ultimately, at the end of the day, no one really cares about what the story will be, why it is that you're going to be hunting, what it is you're going to be hunting. Players will just want to be able to hunt monsters, new engagements, and new ways to be able to play. And of course, when it comes to Rise and Sunbreak, one of the biggest and best introduction, at the very least for base Monster Hunter Rise, was monster variety. That was one of the biggest promoted ideas, or some of the best features added in. The fact that the monsters were very varied and very unique in their own way. Sunbreak, to some degree, added plenty of returning monsters already that players have been expectedly happy with. And at the end of the day, I feel like it's been one of those features or additions to the game that players have been extremely happy with. Of course, we still have the criticism of too many fire monsters, but of course, that will change in the near future as more free title updates get added in. Now, two of the best additions that Rise and Sunbreak have seen is quest variety and followers. Quest variety, especially when it came to Sunbreak, has been fantastic. Even in base Rise, just quest variety was extremely good. They give you different things to do, specifically different ways for you to be able to hunt, and it feels great. Something that World was certainly lacking, and of course, even the old traditional games couldn't necessarily compete since they were very traditional in their own manner, except if you really liked, those egg hunting quests, which no one really liked. So therefore, we don't presume that they necessarily should be coming back any further. But of course, quest variety for Rise and Sunbreak was fantastic, and added to that now with the fact that followers can kind of come along with you pretty much in every single hunt. Followers have just made the single player aspect of base Rise and Sunbreak fantastic. And adding that, of course, to the next mainline game will just kind of be a given by nature kind of feature, I think. It should be just already counted in, if you will. It should be one of those things that whatever characters they decide to introduce for the story aspects of it, those characters should be able to come with you into the game naturally as you kind of like bring them along. Now, should you be limited by just 2, or maybe just have a AI party of 3 other hunters, so you can kind of pseudo online hunt, but kind of like in a single player, so you can have a full party of followers along. That would be fantastic. Maybe even bringing back the addition of guild card exchanges, something that was one of the best features, I think, were from the older traditional 3DS games, was that of course you can swap guild cards with players, bring them along essentially to hunt things for you. And maybe now they can actually expand on that and actually let you bring those ghost characters from your friends from online to be able to just kind of go ahead and come along with you. Now, one of the biggest drawbacks to that feature was the fact that you needed to be able to continually get the newest guild card version if they decided to upgrade their armor or whatever the case is. In this game, probably in the next mainline game, what they could go ahead and do is just make that seamless. Since you are already connected to the internet, whatever guild card you send to someone, it'll be continually updating as you are upgrading your armor, so you don't necessarily have to resend it again to another person. That would be a great added addition. Now, of course, plenty of returning popular monsters like Laggy, and of course, Kurapeko and Devil Joe need to come back. These monsters have been kind of you know, especially Kurapako needs to come back. It's a monster that we've kind of been hoping for quite a while. A lot of people will tell you that Samtrios and Tiger Stripe Samtrios also need to come back, and I 100% agree with that. Maybe even Nivel's Narf, for that matter, should be able to come back. So plenty of those monsters that we haven't necessarily seen for a few generations now should be making a comeback. But it doesn't necessarily need to go unsaid that, of course, plenty of new monsters need to be added in. There's plenty of new ideas. Namiel being one of those more unique monsters added in Iceborne kind of like provided that idea of like, yes, there's plenty of new monster types that they haven't necessarily considered that they could go ahead and add and be able to give players plenty of new experiences and new unique encounters. And that is, at the end of the day, I think the biggest draw in for players. Unique encounters that players haven't necessarily been able to see before. Obviously, we don't need any more fire dragons or anything like that. So maybe provide different elements, and maybe even the addition of a brand new element will go a long way to give us something unique and something that players can hang on to. Now, of course, there could be plenty of drawbacks at the end of the day. I've spoken about this multiple times already. The fact that if they choose to go with season passes, if they decided to make it a live service game, if they decide to do like more interactive microtransactions and things like that, provide more gacha to the game, because of course this is popular in Asia. You know, at the end of the day, those things are not something that players want to be engaging with, at the very least here in the West. And, you know, more live service games seem to be kind of being released by these big companies, and that could be something that players could not probably, you know, end up wanting to take part of. So hopefully Capcom is fully aware that those features are something that they should steer away from, and something that players will simply just not embrace. But once again, I certainly want to hear your guys' feedback. Let me know what type of features, what monsters, what new things you wish to see for the next mainline game, whatever they end up calling it. I keep saying that. Whether it is Monster Hunter 6 because of Generation 6, whether it is Monster Hunter World 2, whether it is Monster Hunter Paradise, which is still my ongoing favorite name, or whatever they choose to go with, we're all hoping for 2023 to finally get that game revealed. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.